Well, the New South Wales Premier made it rather obvious today that the lockdown extension in New South Wales will be extended, short of a miracle in overnight infections, which puts thousands of small businesses in great jeopardy and without JobKeeper will impact the wages of most of their employees. The New South Wales Treasurer is promising support, but where are the small business experts within government advising him on those economic measures? That's part of what business guru Mark Bouris said this weekend in a scathing video message to all politicians. Here's part of that address.
We, the small business community, are having a disproportionate hit in terms of our income relative to what everybody else is getting. We're the ones whose income is affected. And by the way, so are our employees. This is not just about economic disconnect between small business and everybody else, but it's also about emotional disconnect, mental disconnect.
Mark Bouris joins me right now. Good evening to you, Mark.
Hey, Chris, how you going?
I'm very well. If I see or hear a politician say, we're all in this together again, I think I'll scream.
No, it kills me. It's funny, we often criticise our politicians, our politician colleagues across the ditch in New Zealand, but I seem to recall this time last year that most of the senior ministers in New Zealand took a 20% hit on their income just to show solidarity with the small business community, just generally with the community in New Zealand, that everybody actually was in it together in every sense. Not only am I getting a jab, not only am I staying home, but I'm also taking an economic hit, which is what's happening to small businesses in New South Wales and in Sydney. But that's where the disconnect sits, mate. There is no economic hit being shared around the place.
Well, in Victoria, they're getting pay rises. There are some public servants in Queensland getting pay rises. And all we can hear from the Prime Minister on that very subject is, oh, hang on, we've frozen our pay. Frozen our pay? If only people had their pay frozen as opposed to cut or cut off.
And you know what, and this current hit, this current lockdown, everybody says, well, it's only going to be for a couple more weeks. Let's be patient. Let's do all the right things. I get it. And everybody is trying to do the right thing. And I understand they're all coming from the right direction. But lockdowns have something other than just eliminating the COVID cases or reducing the COVID cases down to a manageable number. The other consequence of lockdowns, and it goes on not for 2 weeks, it goes on for 6 months, 1 year, and in some cases for lifetimes for some people. One of the other consequences, a major one, is that small businesses go out of businesses. And another consequence is big businesses get bigger, which makes it harder for the small businesses to recoup and get back up on their feet. And if small businesses go out of business in this city, in this country, we're looking at having a net effect on 5 million lives. That's how many people small businesses employ, 5 million lives and livelihoods.
And perpetual impacts too, because if you're not earning as much money because you've taken a cut or not getting enough days or your business is not even operating anymore, you don't pay into your super, you've got to work longer in life.
And that has a major economic flow-on effect for everybody, for the whole country down the track, because somehow those people are going to have to be supported by on the government purse. They're either going to have to get paid some sort of pension, etc., and or we get a lower class. What we are finding is we're not only getting a bit of division in society, particularly here in Sydney at the moment, and we're getting division between premiers, we're getting division between prime ministers and premiers, we're getting division between health experts, so-called experts around the place, whether it's Victoria, New South Wales or Queensland. Not only getting division, but we are going to start getting division, economic division. So, there's this thing called the Gini coefficient, which measures the difference between rich people and poor people. And I think what's happening here is that over time we are going to get through all these pandemics. If they continue to occur and the only solution is lockdowns, over time we're going to get a lot of people who are going to become unemployed, people who haven't put enough money away through the super, people who haven't been able to build the goodwill in their business, their small business, which effectively is their super at the end of the day. That's going to go down the drain too. And we're going to get a whole lot more people who are not going to have enough money to live a good life. And, I'm not sort of throwing out there socialist sort of ideology. This is not a socialist ideology. I'm not trying to make everyone equal either. I just want everybody, if they work hard and they're putting in, that they get a result for their hard work instead of being told, you've got to lock down, you can't do this, you can't do that, and there's no compensation. I mean, we've got no JobKeeper. So what is the compensation? How do we keep people employed? How do we keep the joint running? And who's in charge? I'd like to know who's in charge of that decision.
Well, let me say that he's obviously getting no first-hand input from small business people. That's not what's going on in state or federal governments. They're doing it on their own. And then the future of livelihoods, well, I guess indirectly sits in the hands of the chief health officer in every state and territory.
And you know, and that, I think that therein lies the issue. This health issue that we are currently experiencing is not just about health. It's not binary. It's multiple. There are multiple facets of it. Yet every decision is about reducing the health issue down to zero or to some other more manageable number other than what it is today. But really what the advice that should be given to somebody, expert advice that should be given to somebody, which the health advisors or the health advice does not understand, is how does this have an effect and what is the effect on humanity? I'm talking about people's livelihoods, small business owners' livelihood. And most countries in the world are highly dependent on small businesses, and Australia is one of the most. So who is the expert or the panel of experts that is advising whoever it is that makes these decisions, these final calls, the knock-on effect, and what is the strategy? What's the roadmap about helping out those individuals or those communities, those groups of people? And by the way, we're talking about millions of people. We're not talking about 1,000 people, 10,000 people, or 77 people who got COVID today. We're talking about millions of people who've worked a whole lifetime trying to build businesses, and now they're just getting them wiped out overnight. Yeah. So who is actually on the panel? Where do the small business community get a seat at the table?
Yes.
That's what I want to know.
Yeah, that's a good question, and maybe they should do something about it. Mark Bouris, always interesting to hear your insight. Thank you for your time tonight. All the best.
Thanks, pal.